to page 2. Notice for page 2, we are now finding relative min and maxes. So the first thing we need to talk about is if the original function has any place where it is undefined. And in this case it does because it's a fraction. I'm hoping that you will see that if at x equals 3 and at x equals -3, it is undefined. So all I did is I factored that if you didn't see it. So continuing on, then I've got to find my derivative. And to find my derivative, I am actually going to do my low d high. So low is x squared minus 9. D high is 0. Subtract -2. Don't forget this negative hooked on. I put it in the numerator. Times the derivative at the bottom, 2x. Square the bottom, x squared minus 9 quantity squared, and away we go. That's giving me positive 4x all over x squared minus 9 quantity squared. Setting it equal to 0. That's over 1. 4x would equal 0. So x equals 0. I found one critical point. I also have to take that 4x over quantity x squared minus 9 quantity squared equal to undefined. And I get x squared minus 9 quantity squared equals 0. Take the square root, x squared minus 9 would equal 0. Move the 9, x squared would equal 9. X would equal plus and minus 3. But then I've got to ask common sense on these things. And the 3's don't make any sense because they make the bottom equal to 0. So 3 and -3 are not being used because of the green derivative part. They're being used because of this blue function stuff from above. So now in my little function f of x on the top and f prime of x on the bottom, I have got to test -3, I've got to test 0, I've got to test 3. So that means I have to test something to the right of -3. So in my derivative, I'm going to put in -4. And when I put in -4, I get 4 over -4 divided by -4 squared minus 9, and then that whole quantity squared. And all I know is that's going to give me a negative number. So this region right here is decreasing. If I test a number in here, such as -2, it is also going to give me a negative that's decreasing. If I test +2, it's going to give me an increasing. And if I test 5, it's going to give me an increasing. Okay, so this one didn't alternate. The only spot that I could have a min or a max is right here where I go from decreasing to increasing. So my minimum values for this case would be my x value being 0. My maximum, there's none. And that is that problem. Okay, so we're going to do similar stuff over here. The first thing I'm asking is, ooh, that's yucky. First thing I'm going to ask is the original function undefined? And it doesn't have a fraction in it, so my answer is no, undefined. Okay, so then I need to find my derivative. To find my derivative, this one is just a power down. Okay, I can deal with that. So powering it down, I am going to get 3x squared minus 4x. And I'm going to take that 3x squared minus 4x, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. I'm going to factor an x out, and I get 3x minus 4 equals 0. So my x value is 0, and an x value is going to be a positive 4/3. Those are going to be my critical points. Okay. I also need to check, and I've already done this in my head. I take that 3x squared minus 4x, and I set it equal to undefined, and you get no critical points from that. So what am I left with? I have my little line, my f of x and my f prime of x. And the only point that I am putting on there this time is 0 and 4/3. And in my original function, in my derivative, I'm going to plug in a number to the left, so f of -1. And I'm going to get 3 times -1 squared minus 4 times -1. And this turns out to be +3, and this turns out to be +4, so this turns out to be positive there. So this is increasing. Pick a number in between. I'm going to pick +1 and do the same thing. And this is going to be a negative value, and that is decreasing. Pick 5. Plug it in. It is increasing. So for this case, I am going to get increasing to decreasing, decreasing to increasing. When I talk about a minimum value, it's going to be at my x value of 4/3. And when I talk about a maximum, it is going to be at an x value of 0. Okay, so a couple more problems on this page and then I'll stop the video. Now I'm trying to find increasing, decreasing. Exact same thing that I just did before, but my answer is going to be slightly different. So first thing I ask myself is the original function undefined? And if you can say no, which I can, because it's a thing, we're going to go on to the next piece. And the next piece is I've got to find my derivative. And with my derivative, the -2 comes down. Cosine's derivative is negative sine, so that made it a positive. And the derivative of x is 1, not writing it down. So 2 sine of x is going to equal 0. So sine of x is going to equal 0. And that means, so think about sine. Sine is 0 at 0 and at pi. Okay, so then I continue and I look at, does 2 sine of x equal undefined? And my answer is, it's going to give me none. Okay, last thing I need to just mention, or do these make sense? Well, 0 and pi fit in there, so yeah, life is good. So I'm going to make my f of x on top and my f prime of x on the bottom. And I'm going to put down, I can only start at -pi, and then I'm going to go to 0, and then I'm going to go to pi. And notice all of those work, so life is good. So as I do this, it's got to be between those. I've only got 2 regions to test. When I test, like -pi/2, that's the one I would do. I would get decreasing, or I'm sorry, negative, which is decreasing. When I do positive, when I do positive pi/2, I get positive numbers, which is increasing. So this has a decreasing to increasing, but it doesn't matter. All they asked me to find for my final answer is, where is this thing going to be decreasing? This thing decreases from my interval of -pi to 0, and it increases on the interval from 0 to pi. That's all it wanted. Done. That's a messy pi, but it's pi. So same idea for number 7. First thing I'm asking myself is the function undefined? And in this case, it's not a fraction, so it is not undefined. I get no solutions. From there, I move on and I find my derivative. And for my derivative, I get -3x squared plus 2x. I set that equal to 0. I see that there is an x that I can factor out, and I'm left with -3x plus 2 equals 0. And I see x would equal 0. That's 1 CP. And x would equal +2/3. Those would be my critical points. I also need to take that negative 3x squared plus 2x and set it equal to undefined. And it wipes everything out, so I get none. No CP points there. So on my graph, f of x on the top, f prime of x on the bottom, I have no interval, so I just need my positive 0, and my positive 2/3 put on here. And now I'm just going to test regions. So in that derivative, I'm going to plug in -1. And I'm going to get -3 times -1 squared plus 2 times -1. And that solution is going to be negative. That means this is decreasing. Plug in a number here. I probably plug in 1/2. And when I plug in 1/2, it's going to be positive and increasing. And when I plug in 2, it's going to be negative and decreasing. And I didn't write all of that out, but it's following here. Pick a number, do that. So where is my intervals increasing? Only from parentheses 0 to 2/3. And where is it decreasing? Only from -infinity to 0 and 2/3 to infinity. And that would be the end of page 2.